I had about a month between my interview with Rob and my acceptance of the job and the start date that we'd agreed upon. So I spent a lot of that month desperately trying to finish off my academic commitments to this postgraduate certificate in ecological survey techniques that I'd undertaken, and also starting to get to know the company culture a bit. So Rob had added me to the company Slack, which was their kind of messaging app and email service, and this was a big kind of communal space where you could message each other, and there was a lot of communal chat channels. So I got added onto there, and even though I hadn't started yet, everyone was very very welcoming, and it just let me kind of passively sit there whilst I was doing my academic work and start to get to know the company culture a bit and see people going about their day, asking each other for help on difficult problems in their working day, quoting for new clients, and organising things like socials. So that was a really good way, I think, to ease into the company dynamic, because I was there and I was present, but I didn't have any demands on work, but I could get involved in conversations, planning socials, and just chatting to people as they went about their day. In this time period, I set up my company LinkedIn. I got very active in talking to other ecologists and starting to kind of establish myself in my career. Rob's very keen on career and professional development, so it was something he was really keen to foster me doing. I got my company email account and started to get used to Basecamp and Highrise, which are some of the other programs we use to organise our work. And as part of this, I got a lot better at kind of presenting myself online. As an academic, I'd always been kind of back of the house work. I'd presented at conferences and things like that, but I hadn't done all that much public engagement. So I started to try and brush up on that and get kind of much better at forward-facing, talking to clients. And it was a good way to ease into that thing, working on LinkedIn all the time. One thing I started to notice was that there was a lot of jargon being thrown around. So everyone would have their specialist channels for their field of like ARB Culture or Ecology or the internal Team HQ team. And they'd be throwing around jargon and acronyms that I just had absolutely no idea what was going on. So they'd be talking about BERS, LERCs, HVCs, and it was business terms that I didn't really have that background because I spent my time doing academia, or it would be specific ecology or arboriculture terms. And I realised I just had no idea what was going on, and I decided to sit down and spend a couple of days making myself a glossary. So every time a term came up that I didn't understand, I would write it down, and I would ask someone in private or in one of the kind of Ask Me Anything channels that Rob maintains. I would say kind of, what does this term mean? What does this mean? And I was a bit embarrassed that maybe there was something like BERS, which is a bat emergence and re-entry survey, which is the kind of bread and butter of bat work. And I'd done those surveys to practice, but I just didn't know the kind of the company's internal acronym for it. So I felt quite embarrassed admitting that I didn't know these things. But after kind of a week of this process, I put together kind of 50 or something terms that the company would regularly use. And I was able to then produce that as a glossary and say, hey, well, next time you have a new starter, you can give them this glossary, and that would actually help their integration into the company. And I then was able to produce that and be like, this is my first success that I've produced this document, which hopefully was treated as a good thing rather than me being officious and showing off. But I thought it was good. So I think there was a really great start at Arbtech, and they had a kind of an induction week where I came up and met the core HQ team up in Chester, and everyone was really welcoming, and there was a couple of other people starting at the same time, so I was able to kind of share the nerves and have other people going through the same process as me at the same time. And I felt that was a good way to start, really. It wasn't just me being on my own. But even if it had, I think it would have been a fairly good experience. The HQ team were very welcoming. We had the opportunity to go out for drinks and to get to know each other a bit. And I felt it was really positive. It was a good easing in. I was very nervous on the day before I went for it. And I was particularly worried that I'd some kind of, oversold myself, or that I'd be expected to be amazing and that I'd be thrown in at the deep end. But instead I met lots of HQ team and their ecology team that's up in Chester, and people kind of slowly took me through the processes, the admin processes, and also the details of the job. And I was also able to go off on some surveys from week one and just trail some of our more experienced ecologists. And the first site we went to was this amazing church on the Welsh coast, where David Lloyd George is buried. And it was this beautiful old church, and we weren't expecting to find any bats there because we thought the stonework was in really good condition. But it turned out actually there was a maternity roost of soprano pipistrelles there. So the very first bat survey I did with the company was 100 bats, beautiful sunset, amazing kind of location. We drove there through Snowdonia, and it was a really fun kind of car trip, getting to know people, chatting. And it was just a really beautiful start with the company, which, was very serendipitous. I mean, my next survey was in inner city Manchester with drunken people shouting at me, so it was possibly a bit different. But I think I just got really lucky with that, and it was really kind of buzzing at the end of it and kind of feeling like this was going to be a great job to do. So starting off as an ecologist, you need quite a lot of equipment. You need range finders for measuring loft spaces. You need to be able to measure temperature. You need your bat detector, and obviously there's also company kit, company uniform, etc. So I picked up most of that at HQ with no problems. That was great. Got a company laptop, and the one issue was that I guess my uniform took a long time to arrive. So I couldn't represent the company. It was very tragic. So I've just been kind of going around to sites in my own uniform, my own personal clothing. But that hasn't been much of a problem. And I think that was just supply chain issues. I think the general culture and atmosphere, Arbtech, is very switched on. It's very engaged. People are very passionate about ecology. They're always kind of they're interested in news articles I might share about ecology or about the environment. And I think there's a kind of a hard hitting business element as well that you might not normally associate with people who are into the environment and into ecology. So I think before I joined the company, I was trying to describe this to my friends, and I was saying, well, I think they're a company of business hippies, which is a kind of not two things you normally put together, but I think it might describe certainly some people at the company quite well. And there's a great sense of everyone has their own specialty and their own niche, and there's a lot of different skills and backgrounds all being synthesized together, and it seems quite open about that. But this is still early days for me, and I haven't met several people in the company, unfortunately, because I'm down here in the south and a lot of the team is up north. So I'm looking forward to the first couple of socials and things like we're going to the Isle of Wight Festival, where I'll get to know people a bit more in person and be able to experience that firsthand and get a more accurate impression. In Arbtech we have two documents that are Rob's kind of company bible, and one's our culture document and the other is something called Project Trust Score. And so I think Rob has really sat down and he's read a lot of books on management and the theory behind them and the idea of how to encourage a positive company culture and to encourage people to kind of trust one another, and how that then turns forward into a well-operating company. The first document, Culture, talks basically about the expectations that he has for us as we work in the company and how we can all work well together. And a lot of this is very kind of informed and well-researched with different bits of kind of psychology, like the 2080 Pareto principle and stuff like that. And he discusses things like, that you actually have to be honest about your failures, and that, it's much better to kind of own up to not knowing something. He talks about the most important thing we do is actually stay on top of our admin, which I admit I may have fallen behind on today. And he talks about how we can relate to one another, how you can meet your own goals in the company, what the expectations are for your billing and things like that. And so that was handed to me on kind of day one or even before I'd started the company. And I read through it, and it was a good way to kind of get to know what the expectations would be. But actually I want to, having talked about it today, I really want to go back and read that document now, having actually got to know the company over the last couple of months. Because it's, it's sort of like we were discussing earlier, the idea that, you can hand someone a description of an elephant, but if they've never seen an elephant, they're going to come up and they're going to draw something really weird. So I think actually it would be so interesting to read that again now, having got to know the company, and see how the culture document informs the company, and I guess also how running the company and how Rob must have been thinking about the company as it existed and the people in that company when he wrote the document. And he also just, he illustrates it with examples of the people in the company as he goes. And now I kind of know those people. I actually know what the hell he's talking about. So as part of that culture document, as a way of kind of maintaining and creating the culture that we want in Arbtech, there's something called Project Trust Score. And the idea here is that we get to anonymously evaluate each other on how we're doing with our own competence and our conscientiousness. And that if we're doing a stellar job there, and people think we're both competent and conscientious and we're making a good impression on each other, that allows us that to be recognised and to be rewarded. And I think obviously there's a flip side of that, which is that if you're not very conscientious, or you may be a little bit behind on your technical knowledge, and people are noticing that, that provides a kind of an anonymous and a non-confrontational way for that to be flagged up, that maybe that you need to then work on that. So I personally haven't experienced either end of that, because I'm very new to the company so far, so I suspect somewhere in my future those things are looming, but hopefully I'll do well at that. And so far everyone else seems to be very competent, so hopefully I'll give them good reviews. Arbtech seems to have a couple of reward structures. There's a couple of benefits that just come with the contract, so they're very keen on kind of you getting a gym membership, having an Audible subscription, and there's a couple of other benefits there. You get your birthday off, which is very exciting. And there's unlimited professional development, which has really benefited me as a new ecology starter. So they're always happy to foot the bill for any kind of ecology training I want to go on and to give me time off to go and pursue that. And then also they seem to have a system of kind of reciprocity in the company. So if you've helped out someone else, you can cheers mate them in one of our Slack channels, and that will kind of, everyone has a wish list of items they want or experiences they'd like up to a certain value. I think it's like £100. So I want plants for my new pond. And if I've done a really good job, someone can say, oh, well done, James, you came and helped out with that survey, or you helped with this really difficult client. One of our senior ecologists, Natalie Evans, really helped me out with a really difficult first client I had a while ago. And at the end of that, I said, thank you so much for that, and go to the Cheersmate channel. And then Rob and the senior team will make sure that's rewarded. And I think it's really good because it means anything you've done that actually goes above and beyond gets recognized by the company and is out there and in writing somewhere that's very visible to everyone. And it does mean that good behavior is received well. I was expecting to find various positive things at Arbtech. I think Rob was very clearly passionate, and I think that carried through the rest of the company. They obviously care about ecology, about the environment and the species we work with, and they care about providing good customer service and working well as a team. So those things were kind of all expected in a way. You expect that out of a good company. But one thing I really loved was that Rob actually cared a lot about our professional development and about our development as people. So Rob obviously reads a lot about how to be a good boss, about how to run a good company, and about the kind of psychology of business, the psychology of how people make decisions. But he doesn't just want to read about that himself. He also wants us to read about it. So what he's done is he's made this kind of bounty list of books on psychology and on business and kind of self-development, which he's then offering us overtime money to go ahead and read. And I was really blown away by this, A, because I love reading, but B, because in my previous job, I felt like I was always expected to give 110% at the job, and therefore there wasn't any time to actually work on myself or improve myself. So by the end of my PhD, I felt like I'd done great science, but I felt diminished as a person. I hadn't had time for hobbies. I hadn't had time for reading interesting books or making myself better. So here was a company that was saying to me, actually, here, we're going to pay you overtime to go off and read things. And, we're going to pay for a gym membership, and we're going to pay for other things that, your professional development, you can go on courses. And I thought that was really amazing, and I got really excited. Since then, I've been really busy doing the actual job, so I'm not sure I've fully taken advantage of those things yet. But I really do like the principle, and I'm started to read some of these books. There's a lot of driving with the company, so I'm driving from site to site. So I've now got an Audible count, and I've got a lot of these things like Nudge, which is about kind of the psychology of decision making and how we can make better decisions. I've now got that on audiobook, and I can listen to it as I'm doing my drives to sites, which would otherwise kind of be dead time. And then I'll be able to kind of talk to Rob about that, and then we'll do a little interview and a discussion about it, about the principles, how I can apply it to work, and we'll go bring that forward. And I think that's really amazing. When I first started with Arbtech, I went up to the north to the HQ, and I was able to go off on quite a few surveys, and I kind of already started getting stuck in with the classic bat surveyor experiences of kind of getting shouted at by security guards because people being like, why are you sitting on a road here? And 6 brown long-eared bats just clinging to the rafters looking down on me. And that was the first actual bat roost that I'd found. So I felt that was a really positive way to get to know the company and to start my career with Arbtech.